My name's Monk Rowe at Hamilton College for the Fillius Jazz Archive, and I'm with Rossano Sportiello today from his apartment in Manhattan, is it?
That's right, in the West Village.
In the West Village, and I see your piano. You're always near a piano, it seems like.
Well, it's especially these days, I think the piano became my best friend, more than ever.
Yesterday, I watched your performance of Thou Swell.
Oh, wow.
It was really swell.
Well, it's, I have to tell you, I was never much technological, and I'm still not technological, but I was not into social medias because
Yes.
I believed as far as I'm healthy and I keep practicing, I could go places to play music. And nobody would have ever guessed that something like this would happen. At least, it was far away. Unfortunately, I was one of those guys that when this mess started to happen, that we were hearing about it in February and very early March, I thought that they were making it bigger than what it really was, and of course I was wrong. So I never thought that after 30 years of performing live with a full schedule, 30 years, I never thought that we could get to a stop like this,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's across the board. People who are NEA jazz masters can't get a gig, as well as the people who are playing in the American Legion on the weekends. It's the same for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what happened, I was on tour in Europe. The tour started at the end of February and was supposed to go on until the first week of April. All one-nighters, But of course, at around March 8, 9, 10, we started being bombarded of emails of people canceling our concerts. And so our last performance was actually on March 13th in Germany, and I was able to get a flight back to New York on March 16th. And that was the end of it. So I stayed, I think, about 4 weeks without doing nothing, even because the first 2 weeks I was supposed to be quarantined.
Uh-huh.
Right? So I just was locked into the bedroom. My wife was sleeping on the sofa, And
Oh,
so then the 2 weeks went by, and life was back in a way. So at least I could go to the grocery store with the mask. And so I think another 10 days went by, and then I told myself, I cannot just keep doing this like, just not playing anymore, not performing anymore.
mm-hmm.
And so I started making every night 1 or 2 videos and posting them on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
mostly improvisation based on standards.
Right.
And so, because you see, my wife also has been working from home, what happened, the only chance for me to really record these clips was at night. And so I had to use the mute on the piano. And so I called it the muted piano late night sessions.
Now,
So I did, I think, 112 of those.
wow. Are you talking about the soft pedal?
Yeah, the soft pedal that some upright pianos have, that normally is the middle pedal.
Yes.
You press it down and there is a felt that goes in between the strings and the hammers.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates like that a very soft, muffled sound that is actually very nice. And I found it in a way very, very jazzy. And so I started recording these videos. I would put on a suit every night with a jacket and tie, and it started almost like a joke, and then people seemed to like it, and they kept watching these videos, and I put there a link for donations in case
Right.
someone. And I have to be honest with you. At first, the donation option, I didn't even consider it. And then I had some fans writing to me privately saying, please post a link for. And so I didn't know how to do it because I didn't know what PayPal was. I didn't know what Venmo was. Still, because I'm not technological. I'm old school. I get paid either with the checks and sometimes with a little cash. So I figured out the PayPal and Venmo, and I put it there. And now every now and then people will drop something. But it's not the money. I think I'm very grateful for people donating some money, but the greatest satisfaction came when I got an email from a gentleman that is 97 years old, 97, and he said, I wake up every morning looking for your new video, and so that's it. No matter what, I'm gonna do it, because this one person that is 97 years old, that loves music and gets up in the morning and wants to see my late night video, that means more than anything to me. And then I started to get mails from young piano players, asking me for suggestions and expressing, their desire to learn. And so that was another strong motivation. I said, I'm happy to show my hands and the way I improvise, and all this material is there for anyone to use the way they want. If all of a sudden there are 10 piano players, young piano players, that start so-called stealing phrases and techniques, that's what they're supposed to do. I'm happy for that. I hope all this music that I've been posting has helped someone to alleviate all the psychological stress.
Yes. During our first interview, you said something, and I wrote it down: to play jazz and make it understandable is one of my goals.
Yeah.
And it's very curious that you're actually able, in a different way, to accomplish that, the things you're describing.
Well, it's almost a philosophical problem, How many times we look at art, and we don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. We don't, so it becomes sometimes a decision to say I like it or not. So sometimes we say I like it, sometimes we say I don't like it, but we don't have really a reason because we don't really understand what is going on, Mm-hmm. And so I always wondered, is there a way to play music, in my case, to play music and come up with something that can be beautiful, that can be smart, that can be also new, but at the same time enjoyable and understandable. Understandable means even just, even if you're not a musician, you don't know about theory, you don't have perfect pitch, but is there an emotion that goes through and gets to you? Mm-hmm. That's, I think, what understandable means.
Okay.
And so I'm constantly thinking of that. Every time I perform, every time I make a recording or play live or make a post, I ask myself, will this communicate some sort of message? So I hope so.
Well, you got me with your "Thou Swell." I mean, even from a rhythmic drive, like, wow, that made my heart speed up a little bit, I think.
Right.
That stride thing, I just like, well, that's almost impossible what you're doing.
Well, you know, I mean, the stride was, I think, what got me the most since the very beginning. You know, even when I started playing classical and I didn't know about the existence of jazz, when I would hear someone play that thing with the left hand, I don't know what it was. It would just get to me, you know. I don't know if someone would say, what is that got your attention about that left hand? I liked it, you know. I just felt it in my stomach, you know. I don't know. To me, one possible explanation is that that movement of the left hand, bass and chord, umpa, 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 in a certain way resembles the very meaning of life, that is the pulse of your heart, you know, the opening and closing of your lungs. So probably at a subconscious level, I associate that with the very basic function of life that makes our life as human being possible. You know, the rhythmic contraction of the heart and the lungs. That's the only explanation I can give about this sort of attraction I always felt.
Well, it got me in the heart.
Well, thank you.
Okay. I'm curious, you said you were on tour in Europe. Did you find it necessary to cancel gigs yourself so you could get home?
No, I didn't have to. Just promoters. Even because, I'll say it one more time, I was not willing to cancel myself because we still had around so many people, including doctors, that were saying that this wasn't a big deal. You know, there were doctors on TV that they were saying that this was just like a common cold or something, not much worse than the seasonal, you know. And so we listened to that, and I think maybe we were hoping that that was the case, you know. But then, you know, speaking of Facebook, a few days ago was circulating a post of someone asking if we knew anyone that died or got, you know, and I have to say, I had quite few friends and people that I knew that died with the disease. And I had friends that got the disease. Some of them went to the hospital and recovered. Some of them, they just stayed home. They just had a regular sore throat, a little bit of coughing, and a friend of mine just lost the sense of smell for 3 weeks. And that was about the only symptoms.
Wow.
So I have to say, probably this is real because I never had, in one certain period of my life, 4 friends dying with the same disease.
Right.
You know?
And people that meant so much to us, like Bucky and Ruth.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Did you change your behavior as New York City got worse and now it's getting better?
No, I didn't change yet my behavior. You know, the only thing that maybe I do just a little, I go out a little bit more, you know, but not for fun. I just go out if I need something like, you know, I've been fooling around with a little bit of recording equipment. I bought a microphone, so I'll go to the B&H shop, buy bicycle, wearing the mask, and if something all of a sudden comes to my mind, I need a cable, then I'll get the bicycle and go, you know. While in the first few weeks, I would just go downstairs once a week to buy food. Now I go downstairs to the market every day to buy food, you know, because it's just downstairs. So that's about it.
Yeah. Do you have any personal thought about why this has occurred now?
I think that we were lucky that 100 years went by and didn't have such a big pandemic going on, because I think the last event that is even that can be considered similar to this was the Spanish flu, even though back then I think the numbers of people that died was unbelievable, like more than the fatalities of the two wars I've heard, you know. But you know, there is something to be said. I saw an interview of an Italian ex-elementary school teacher that was that she is still alive, I think 100 and some years old. And she was saying, very smart, very bright still, you know, unbelievable. I was very fascinated. She was saying that she went through, as a little child, to the Spanish flu, and then the wars, they lost everything. The family lost everything in the first war. She lost everything again in the second war. And then, but she said they never felt like we feel today, the sense of anxiety and stress and preoccupation, and never. The life didn't stop during the war. They would go dancing normally during the weekends, and then the alarm would go off and they would try to hide in the basements, and but then when the alarm would stop, they would go up again to the club and keep dancing, you know. And the same thing, I was reading to George Shearing's biography, you know, during the war in England. Guys, they were going out and play gigs every night. Even, and then the planes would come, the Germans, and drop few bombs, and of course some people died, but it didn't stop them from running their regular life.
Wow.
So this is something that we should think about. Why is that?
Do you think it's partly because we're bombarded with so much information 24 hours a day that it stifles us?
I think that's the point. I stopped watching television a long time ago. You know, if you ask my wife, you see now they have this new flat screen television, and we have one of them. I don't even know how to turn it on. You know, there are two remotes apparently. One is for the TV and the other one is for the box. I have no idea which one is which and how it works, really. You know, so I have to absorb a little bit of television when my wife wants to watch it. But otherwise, I'm not gonna turn it on. I don't need it, you know. And you know, the other issue that is very important, and you know, but I'm starting to get this very alarming feeling that we don't know anymore where is the truth. Because you turn on one channel and they tell you one thing. You turn on the other channel, they tell you the opposite. Then you turn on the day after the same channel and they say the opposite of what they were saying the day before. And it's been going on like this now for months. You know, we know with the problem with the masks. At the beginning, there were people that were saying masks are useless. We shouldn't be wearing the mask. Actually, some doctors say that the mask will make you sick. Other doctors, they were saying, no, you use the mask just to prevent yourself from contaminating the environment. And so they kept going weeks with this issue of the masks, you know. So people is gonna go crazy trying to decide what to do and what is right to do. You know, I don't know. I think in a few years, once this will be over, I hope that some scientists, they will run a sort of sociological study about all this mess that happened.
Yes, I think historians are gonna, and sociologists
Right.
are gonna be busy with 2020 for a long time.
Yeah, because this is beyond, you know, the way that we are bombarded. But it's not only TV. You gotta be careful also in the internet. You know, now I don't know why when I turn on my computer and I start the browser, right away I get a pop-up of news.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't know how to turn that off, you know. But even if you don't, in my phone every morning during the day, I get something that pops up, and then you click, you put your finger there, and you get news.
Yes.
And it's just one news after the other, just bad stuff happening, you know.
People, the people that are watching this later on won't know that it took me 15 minutes to make this Zoom happen today. I'm wondering if both of us were sort of born in the wrong era.
Well, you know, we just kept doing things up to now, and we made a living that did not require all this equipment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just made a living traveling and going in front of an audience and play the piano since I was 16 years old. I'm 46 now. I repeat myself, 30 years. You know, so I think unless you're very passionate about technology, then if you don't need it, you don't need it. I still have friends that they don't have a cell phone because they don't need it. They work, they do a business, a family-run business, and they don't need a cell phone. You know, they just have a landline phone. They barely know how to open a computer. And just because now they're imposing that you do some business with emails, you know.
Yes.
So at the age of 70 some years old, they had to learn how to do emails.
Right.
Otherwise, they would have been perfectly happy still writing letters.
Yes.
You know.
Every once in a while in this country, we read about Italian politics, and you know, they have their share of issues and scandals and so forth. As that is your native country, I wonder how our politics compare to what you grew up with.
Well, the scandals were always there, and I think that in the 70s and the early 80s, the situation was even much worse, because we shouldn't forget that we had a problem of internal terrorism in Italy. So we had the organized crime that was killing judges almost every week. You know, in the one of our prime minister, you know, Aldo Moro, was was killed by the extreme left movement. You know, so we had terrible things happening, way worse than today. But again, for some reason, you know, I was little, so I don't remember much. But my parents, when I talked to them, they say that there was a joy of living, you know, even though they would blow up every now and then a train station, they would blow up a square in Milan, you know, and people getting killed like that. But no one felt oppressed by this kind of anxiety that we are feeling today, even though those times now, watching now, they seem to be worse and more dangerous than now.
Mm-hmm.
So again, what is that? You know, I think you have a point, is just the fact that all day long people are watching TV and being bombarded. You know, because back then the TV would be, that's another issue. We would turn on the TV only in the evening, having dinner, watching the news, and maybe in the early morning before going to school they had a little show of cartoons that we would watch as kids. And then in the afternoon we would come back from school and we were allowed maybe 1 hour to watch TV in the afternoon. Otherwise we would turn it off. Mm-hmm. And we would turn it off even because there was awareness about the consumption of electricity, you know. I remember my grandmother, I used to have one of those cute electric trains, you know, that my father bought for us. And once I took it to my grandmother, and so I plugged it in, I put it together and I started playing. And then after about half hour, my grandmother said, "Now we stop because the electricity is expensive." and that was perfectly normal. We accepted that. Mm-hmm. Now, if you tell a kid, you know, now you stop doing the video game because the electricity is expensive, you know, they're looking like you're crazy. They're gonna call the number, you know, 911, said, "My father is going crazy."
I know the power went out in our house the other night, and it was like, what do we do?
That's right.
It was like a crisis. Oh.
Yeah, so but think of that. We are talking about not that long ago, you know, mm-hmm. The early 80s. I was 6, 7, 8 years old, uh-huh. You know, and this was our life, you know, everything. Nothing would go to waste. Nothing would go to waste.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll tell you one more thing, and I'm not afraid of sharing some very personal matters. In the first apartment that I remember living with my parents, that is where I was born, we didn't have the telephone. We got our first landline phone, I think, when I was 7 years old. And also, until the age of 7, we didn't have warm water. We only had cold water. So, when in the summer it wasn't a big deal, but in winter, we would wash our faces with the cold water in the morning, and we would take bath. My mother would put some big pots of water to boil, you know, and then mix it with the cold water in the bathtub. And I did that until 7, and I don't remember no one of us ever complained about that.
Mm-hmm. It's just what it was.
Yeah, and we were always clean, you know, because always clean clothes. I can't even tell you, you know, how things are changed, and in spite, now we have a much more comfortable life, But why is that we feel so much nostalgic about those years?
Yeah.
What is that?
Does the nostalgia come out in your piano playing?
I think has got more and more the tendency to do that, but sometimes I have to control myself because I end up to playing music that is too sad. Sometimes I get the impression. So I have to think about that, you know, because if you start to try to put into music some of your emotion, then unfortunately I might have the tendency to go toward a little bit of darkness, and I don't want to do that, you know. So I think maybe now more than ever we need to try to lift our spirits, you know. We need to try to inspire other people for the best in the future to come, you know. Because otherwise, if we get into this loop of negativity, it's a disaster. At least, maybe I'm wrong, you know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think the 97-year-old fellow who tunes into you every day will think you're right.
Yeah, I think so too, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up with my grandparents, all four of them, and they had a long life. So I was already an adult and still having four of them around. And there isn't one single day that goes by without me thinking of my grandparents. You know, and whenever I have to make a decision about something or I have a problem, I try to daydream as they could be here and I could ask them, what would you do? What do you think? And it seems to me sometimes I hear their voices, you know, and the most beautiful thing is that I still remember very clearly their common sense. This is people that they had good common sense, you know. These were people, the generation of people that could weight reality better than us. Maybe because they went through the war and they saw things that we. I'm sorry. It was toward the end of one of my grandparents that the paternal grandfather that I asked him about wartime, and I never did before, and he told me things that I would have never imagined, you know, like be starving, like being walking in the snow without proper shoes for days, you know, and things like this. So these people, they had to have a better approach with reality, the coping mechanism with reality, and developing a good common sense.
Right.
That with most of us is missing now.
Rossano, it sounds like there's a suite of original compositions waiting to come out from you. That's what I think.
I've been composing during these months.
Good.
So what happens here is another story. So already 3 months ago, I sent out a newsletter from my website saying that I was willing to do private concerts on Zoom, that I was even willing to write songs under commission. So if someone thought that they wanted a song written for themselves or for someone else, and I got 3 or 4 people answering to that, and they asked me, you know, I would like to have one song composed for my daughter, one song composed for my husband. I would like one song composed for my friend. And so I started more and more sit at the piano, you know, with a piece of manuscript paper and a pencil, and music started to come out of my fingers first, and then I would write it down as soon as I would get a good idea. And so now I have quite a few. So I'm preparing now. Actually, I'll go on the recording studio this coming Thursday and Friday to do a new piano solo record for Arbor's Records.
Oh, wonderful.
And so I'm gonna include a few of these new compositions in this record.
Good.
But, you know, it's, I think it's nice. The thing about composing is that you come up with a song that you like, and then you tell yourself, I did this, you know?
Yes.
So I've got my own tune that I can improvise on now.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's nice to throw it out there and see what other people think about it.
Yeah.
You know, without much expectations, but something nice to do.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your sharing your personal feelings, and I'm going to end this by saying I am anticipating when you finally are able to get back and play a real gig on a wonderful piano without the soft pedal engaged.
That's right.
You are going to get a surge throughout your body, and I hope I'm there.
Well, I hope so. It was very, very kind of you for you to do this, and I think this is the second interview that I got the chance to do with you.
Yes.
And I have to say that I always enjoy it very much because I love your questions, I love to talk to you, and I feel it also like your questions are inspiring sometimes, you know, and that's very important. Because there is nothing worse than when you get an interview and you are asked questions and you really don't feel any kind of connection with the interviewer, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with you has been always a pleasure, really.
Well,
so anytime.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Thank you for giving me this chance to express a little bit of my thoughts with my words and not only just with my hands.
Good. I encourage you to stay closer to the piano and stay away from that television.
Absolutely. There is no danger for that.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you very much.
I wish you all the best and we'll be in touch.
Okay. Over and out.
All right. Take care.
Bye.